So thanks very much. My name's Robert Gotts, and along with Peter Robinson, who will be here for the questioning bit at the end, we together form the branch management of the Wellbeing Program in the ACT Government. So we're exploring the ways in which job sharing can improve our own personal and individual well-being. So far, it's turning into a really good deal for the ACT government because they pay each of us 3 days a week, but we get to work 5 days a week. So it's pretty cool. So the task I've got today is almost impossible for a couple of reasons. And that's to fit in the things that we're doing in 10 minutes is pretty close to impossible. I'm also struggling to get the image of my wine fridge out of my head, having been asked to think about what was important to me, and now it's blocking most of my thoughts. But what might help here is that if you remember what Cressida had to say, and pretty much everything that she said is what we're trying to do. So I'm not saying that we're succeeding, but we are trying very hard. So at the last of these forums, we talked about our overall wellbeing framework, what we call the ACT's first wellbeing framework, and its implementation in decision making and so on. And that was to do with things like wellbeing impact assessments that go to associated with budget bids and so on. What we want to do now is to focus more tightly on some of the actual things that we're doing to drive well-being into the public service. So, the Chief Minister helped with that only yesterday because he released a wellbeing budget statement along with the rest of the ACT budget. And the wellbeing budget statement, which is the first specific wellbeing budget statement that has gone with an ACT budget. And the very first line of his introduction to that was that the first responsibility of government is the well-being of the people. Now, we couldn't say it any better than that, but that's exactly how well we said it. And it is, I think, it gives, in a sense, the ability to think right across government as to how we are going to actually continue to make this work. And picking up again on some things that Cressida said and that Ken Henry said in his address, this stuff is really hard. We are fundamentally asking a whole public service, and not just the public service, but the executive arm of government as well, to think differently about the issues in society, to understand them in ways that they haven't necessarily traditionally understood them. We've heard other people talk about the competitive nature of cabinet processes, and we have to be able to challenge all of that, and it is not going to be easy. So what I'll do today is just pick on a couple of bits of the things we're doing. One of those is the establishment of an evidence base that is capable of supporting the sort of wellbeing models that we are in the process of implementing. And when I say wellbeing models, one of the things that we haven't got time to talk about today is a broader wellbeing ecosystem and wellbeing architecture that we've developed over the last 12 months or so. And that working with Chris Eccles, who some of you may know, and that sits behind a lot of what I'm going to talk about today. And two elements of that are a wellbeing evidence base and the value of structured partnerships between agencies in order to deliver outcomes. So, and so I don't forget and get behind. You might imagine that a strong evidence base is obvious, and there is plenty of data out there now. So education departments collect education data, health departments collect health data, and so on, right across the span of government. There is plenty of data out there, but what we're really conscious of is that that outcomes, wellbeing outcomes for our community don't travel along narrow portfolio lines. They operate across that. So we have to be able to think across portfolios. How does the work of a health portfolio impact on the work of an education portfolio, and so on, but right across government, and how could we construct an evidence base to support the thinking that goes with that, the input into the policy process, the input into the investment decisions, and the ability to then evaluate the impact of what we're doing. So we've got 4 projects that I'll briefly talk about that go to that. So the first of those is that we work with Jackie here in Canberra, University of Canberra, on the Living Well in the ACT Region Survey. So it's one of our fundamental underlying sources of data, and I should say congratulate Jackie, who can't see where she is. This is a great workshop, Jackie. So yeah. So that's one of the core components of what we're doing. We've also established about a year ago a strategic partnership with the ANU. So that's a co-investment. So when we say strategic partnership, it is not the ACT government buying services from the ANU. This is a co-investment whereby the ANU has invested by engaging a number of academics to work with us in a structured way on linked data sets that we are in the process of putting together. So, and the sorts of projects that go with that, for example, is we are looking at the way in which health data and education data can provide insights into self-harm in young people, for example. So that's one. Another is that because we have a lot of data on perinatal data, kindergarten health data, and so on, then we're interested in understanding the extent to which health issues in very young children can be seen impacting those children's outcomes through education and related things. So there's a set of projects that we're working on there. The next project is that as of January this year, the ACT was selected by the ABS along with the South Australia as the pilot jurisdiction for the Life Course Data Initiative. It's one of the initiatives under the TED program that you just heard a little bit about, where the Commonwealth, I think it's 14.6 million, has been allocated to essentially establish a linked data set of what will be ACT data, some South Australian data, and Australian government data. So, and I'll talk in a bit about what's in that and what we are looking at in terms of research with using that data. And the fourth project is that we have another shared investment arrangement with Data 61, which some of you may know. Data 61 is the data science arm of the CSIRO. And the reason we're working with them is that putting together really, really big longitudinal and extremely complex linked data sets that involve data from more than one level of government, as well as more than one jurisdiction and multiple agencies, Oh, it's so hard. I just want to sleep. But it really is exhausting. That doing that is really, it's not just difficult, but we're conscious that it doesn't happen very often. There aren't many of these data sets around the place, and that means that the tools to gain value out of these data sets haven't been well developed either. So the arrangement with Data 61 is for them to work on developing novel analytical techniques to apply to these data sets. So the project we're doing for the life course is looking at entrenched disadvantage for a cohort of children between 0 and 14. Obviously, that extends to information beyond those ages, but essentially it's looking at that group. One of the issues with and the differences between looking at data from adults and data from children and young people is that, reasonably speaking, is that adults, unless something really significant has happened in their lives, adult data is relatively stable over a number of years. The data for children and young people is not. They change. You know, a 10-year-old and the way a 10-year-old answers a survey is not the same as the way a 14-year-old will answer that survey, which is not the same as the way an 18-year-old will answer that survey. And we know that, and because we've spent the last 9 years building up a longitudinal picture of students in the ACT on exactly this, and we can see that there are very clear development patterns that are common across kids. Obviously, there's variation in that, but there are patterns that are development patterns. And the issue when you're looking at these big linked data sets is if you don't understand what is the reasonable development pathway of kids and how that might be different from, in other words, if the data varies greatly between a couple of years, there might be a good reason for it, which is the development rather than something else has happened. So that's what we are working with Data 61 on. And in particular, the thing that is going to be the most valuable for us is causal inference. We really want to understand from these big data sets what the causal pathways are, especially where they're non-linear, and mostly they're not linear. So that's just a quick picture of the data that's involved in the Life Course Data Initiative. I won't talk about it in any detail. If these slides are made available, you'll be able to look at it. But it is a mix of ACT government administrative data and Commonwealth administrative data. So the the research project that the ACT has committed to undertake for the Life Course Data Initiative, and under the arrangement, we've committed to deliver as a minimum one research project. We are obviously planning very many more than one, but we're committed to one. And the one that we're looking at is getting a better understanding of the characteristics of people in an entrenched, disadvantaged state. We're very interested in the pathways in how long people remain in that state and the pathways out. And our work is intended to build on earlier work that was done on HILDA data to except whereas HILDA is a sample, we're looking at essentially a whole population's data. So we very much looking forward to that. And just to finish, because I suspect I'm running out of time, this is an example of the sort of thing that we expect one of these linked data sets to deliver to us. What you can see there is work that was done earlier in conjunction with the ANU and data scientists at Gradient Institute, and that's health-linked data with ACT education data. And really what we were doing was we were looking at the home environment of children, sleep patterns, diet, physical activity, and general health, and the way that that home environment flowed through to impact on students' well-being. And then the next step in that was how did students' well-being flow on to their academic outcomes. And what that really showed was that self-reported health and sleep length were the really big factors that were impacting on student well-being. And we were literally seeing, at breakfast, not having regular breakfast was the other one. So we were seeing kids with interrupted sleep patterns were more likely to have higher levels of depression. And for every standard deviation increase in our depression measure, their NAPLAN results went down by 7%. So it was pretty clear. And this was done using boosted gradient trees and a whole lot of analytical techniques that I can't spell, I can't even pronounce some of them, but they're cool. So that's really what we're looking at. We haven't got time to talk about a lot of other cool stuff that we're doing, but Peter and I are around and we'll be happy to talk outside this